Start off season 2 again, Carter.
And welcome back to Mother's Monthly, sponsored by NPR, your favorite podcast for aspiring mothers and soon to be mothers. To kick off this second season, the placenta. You've been told to eat it, but have you tried smoking it? We will talk to a few experts on the matter. But actually, it's Carter and Kevin Explains Football, season 2. Carter here.
I'm wondering, when you say smoke it, do you mean smoke it like a cigarette, or do you mean smoke it as in like cook it in a smoker?
Shit, I didn't think about that. Well, at first I thought like roll it up and put it in a cigarette, but then I'm like, isn't it liquidy? So maybe you put it in a bong and it does like the bubbly thing. But I also don't know how a bong works. So
Well, that's a
um,
separate show.
yeah, that's the off season. But yes, we are here. Week 1, ladies and gentlemen, is in the books. Football is certifiably back. We're so Barack. We're so Kamala. That's nothing.
No.
But we're back. We had a crazy week of games. I always love week 1 because I love, everyone's best laid plans, everyone's best laid theories and discussions. And then you just discover things and you overreact and panic. Like, oh, shoot, is the Ravens' offensive line bad? Can two 30-plus-year-old quarterbacks coming off Achilles tears actually move? Oh my God, I'm blanking on his name right now. Oh my God, who's the quarterback for Washington?
Drake May, right? No.
No, that's
Jaden
New England. Jaden Daniels. Jesus. I wanted to say Jalen Warren, and I'm like, that's a running back. Will he be able to survive 17 games with his head intact? So many little things you don't factor in going into a season, just coming to a head almost immediately, so we can all overreact to a single week of football. Do you want to kick it off with, if you guys remember last year, we had highlights, lowlights, notable notes. Do you want to kick it off with the highlights, Kevin?
Sure, let's start with just, I think, one of the biggest highlights and possible improvements.
Literal highlights.
Yeah. Almost a human highlight reel. Anthony Richardson is throwing cannons. He's not even throwing bombs. He's throwing cannons.
Right.
Dude,
if you saw
that was like the best snap of the game. He threw 60-plus yards?
I believe it was 60-plus air yards. I think, yes, it was 60-plus air yards because it was basically across his body on top of everything else. Yes, so if you saw one highlight from this week, it probably was this. Within the first quarter of the game between the Colts and the Texans, Anthony Richardson, someone we were really gassing up last year before he missed most of the year due to injury, drops back, slips on the turf, has about 3 guys closing in on him, pocket is fully collapsed, kind of just whips his elbow very effortlessly. The ball just kind of diagonals through the air, makes it into Alec Pierce's hand, and he scores a 60-yard touchdown. One of the most insane throws of the day. And then he did it again.
Yes.
And then he ran for a touchdown. In terms of like the Anthony Richardson experience, this was absolutely everything we kind of were
expecting
that we were getting.
Year.
Yes, that we got glimpses of last year, but he didn't play long. He didn't play enough full games to fully appreciate. I do want to list his highlights because truly, this is a masterclass in box score not equaling excitement or value to team. Do you want to guess what his actual completions to attempts was?
No, because I'm looking at the stat right now.
9 of 19. He completed less than half of his passes for 2. 19 times he threw the ball. He dropped back 21 times if you include his 2 sacks. Yeah. Of the 21 times he dropped back and attempted to throw the ball, only 9 of them were caught. For 212 yards, that's 11.2 average per throw and 2 touchdowns. And 6 carries for 56 yards, which is almost 10 yards. Almost a first down every time he decided to run with the ball.
That's kind
of a
truly insane
ubery stat line. It really is like I mean, people want to compare it to Josh Allen because it does have that early Josh Allen energy of like, oh my God, look at these numbers are so bad. But then you watch the game and you're like, oh, snap. Yeah, but he also almost won the game. Yeah. But no, this is beyond that. This is off the. I've never seen Josh Allen make a throw like that. I don't think I've seen anyone in the NFL make a throw like that.
because it wasn't even like a stable throw either. He was like falling backwards and just kind of just threw it with all of his might
Guessing it.
and just hit. Like I think he's a really good quarterback under pressure. But the second he doesn't have that like extra pressure where he's like that little bit of panic, the adrenaline gets a little extra high because you're gonna be
Right.
hit by a 300-pound man. If he doesn't have
Yeah.
that, I feel like he's not making some like very easy throws. But it's like,
Right.
oh, when like shit's going awry and he's scrambling a little bit and about to eat it, and it's like, yeah,
It-
60-yard pass, 54-yard pass for touchdowns.
It is kind of extraordinary. It is kind of extraordinary how like easy all of the difficult stuff seems for him, and how difficult some of the easier stuff is. He could have easily had another 100 yards, and Adonai
Right.
Mitchell could have had one of the best rookie since like starts to a career, because there were 3 20-plus yard absolute bombs Richardson tried to throw and just kind of missed the broadside of a barn.
Yeah,
It really is. I think it is like the football nerds will continue to defend this guy. One, because he's raw, because he's literally only played 14 games of football since college. That's not like, again,
That's
he
not
literally
much.
just needs more reps to know how to get his body in the exact right spot to make the throw. But also, like, I think he's exciting because we have seen like sort of a dearth of offense in the last couple of years. We kind of have seen like defense has finally caught up to high flying offense, like sort of the sort of spread that we've seen over the last few years in terms of defenders are more athletic, and also we're like fully committing to you are going to have to dink and dunk your way down the field. We will not let you throw over us. And Anthony Richardson's bold solution to that is I don't have to care because my arm strength is literally unchartable.
yeah,
Watch this. And if you actually do manage to cover all those guys, I'm also built like I'm literally built like Derrick Henry, so I'll just run through you. Truly a remarkable game. They did not end up winning. The Texans won 29-27.
solid.
Stroud also had a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stroud also looked good, but it was a much less exciting
Yeah,
sort of offense.
C.J. Stroud was a lot like he wasn't quite like a highlight reel. Like,
He was just a professional.
yeah, he was a leader on the field, and they were tactical and smart. And although Nico Collins made an insane catch for him,
Oh,
like
yes.
that was like he got his knee in bounds because one knee equals 2 feet because math.
Yeah. Because this is an arbitrary game made up for children.
Yeah, but it's like that kind. It was like one of those moments where it's just like he knew exactly where he was on the field and what to do, and just instincted out.
Mhm.
But it was a pretty great game to watch. I will say,
Right.
for those of you playing along at home in like fantasy leagues, Khalif Fairbairn, the Texans kicker, definitely
Yes,
someone
I have him.
You definitely want him on your team. He's a solid kicker.
Yes, 3 50-yard absolute bombs almost saved it for me. Sorry to do fantasy corner, but going into the final game of the Monday,
Yeah.
going into 49ers Jets, or going into the night games, I had Ayuk, I had Cup, I had Brown, and he had Debo Samuel. By all reasonable metrics, I should have won that, and yet here we are. Fantasy's stupid. But
Going
yes,
into the final
anyway.
game, going into the Monday night game, I had George Kittle in the 49ers defense just against Jake Moody, the kicker for the 49ers. And he fucking balled out.
Yes, kickers win games. But yes, I will say this game rules because the AFC South went from a punchline to, oh, sick, we get this
Yes.
twice a year? And also, like, the future of the NFL was fully on display in terms of, like, yeah, this is why people lose their minds trying to find quarterbacks. Because right now, just to get through the AFC, you're going to have to get through CJ Stroud, Golden Boy, precision leader of a dynamic and diverse offense, and Anthony Richardson, a human explosion supernova.
Yeah.
And if you don't have something that compete with those, then you're not really going to have a real chance.
I think that this Texans also displayed exactly what we were like talking about with them, where last season was the proof of concept, and now that they have like more talent, they can ball out harder.
Oh yeah, like I genuinely both of these teams. I'm like,
Oh yeah,
in terms of like overreactions to the start of the season, if Richardson's healthy, I don't see how both of these teams don't make the make the playoffs.
yeah. With like, first off, both teams have great stats across the board, minus the 9 for 19, like which is kind of a little bit bad, but everything else is looking good. But I think when we first started the show last year, like this time last year, this was like the Jaguars' division to lose.
And that's
That's
emphatically
obviously what
what's
they did.
not happening now.
But it was like they were the previous NFC South, where it's just kind of a garbage pit of talent. Where talent goes to die was the AFC South, and now it is like it's a hot division. I don't know what other way to say it. It's a hot division.
Right, even at least the Titans can put up a fight. Like,
yeah.
And we'll get to the very funny thing that happened in the Titans game. But yeah, honestly, that was probably the game of the week for me. I can't speak for everyone else, but on that note, it really was a pretty strong opening weekend for games. The NFL definitely said, you know what, let's go big or go home this week. The matchups were really strong, and the note I made on this were sort of the big rivalries remained hot. Just talking about some of the matchups we got to kick the season off.
Chiefs Ravens. To not
Yes.
kick off the team season, to kick off the league season. What an insane
Ended up living up to the hype.
That is
Yes,
what I would love to see. Like, sure, I'd advocate for like a rematch of the Super Bowl as like the opening game. See how everyone did last summer, but damn, a rematch of the conference game like that, where it comes down to a fucking, like, if you X-rayed his foot, all the bones of his foot would have been in bounds, but his shoe wasn't, kind of play.
Yes, it'll be remembered as the shoe game, but like the Chiefs looked so much calmer than they did last year in terms of like having big boy professionals handling the offense.
Yes.
Rashee Rice, who I still don't understand how he got out of getting suspended, but we'll worry about that next season, looked great. Xavier Worthy was fun as a gadget player.
I thought
Noah Gray and Travis.
Small. I thought Worthy was a little small, and then I saw him just bob and weave in like between everyone. And I was just like, oh, this is like the right kind of small guy.
Right. As we were discussing last year, it is a golden age for tiny players, as long as you accept that they probably will miss like 3 or 4 games because of assorted injuries.
Yeah.
The Chiefs' defense continued to look absolutely ridiculous. It's so hard to tell how much of the Ravens' offensive line problems were, well, the offensive line is bad now, Carter Panic time for some panic trades, or that Chris Jones continues to probably, especially now that Aaron Donald's out of the league, seems like he's already moving to take the championship belt of big guy on the offensive, or big defensive guy who destroys offensive lines.
Yeah, I think he's making a case for himself to be the next Aaron Donald.
Oh yeah, and like while it was an occasionally erratic game from Lamar Jackson, you also just saw like why he's considered one of the special quarterbacks in the league in terms of like that just was like a put on a show Lamar Jackson game in a lot of ways. And you saw the glimmers of what you want to see with Derrick Henry and him, of like, oh, there are 3 or 4 times where Derrick Henry's just getting an extra 3 yards because the defense is panicking to decide who to prioritize. And yeah, it ended up being one of the more exciting endings to a opening weekend game. It is nice that they pivoted the opening weekend games from being a cupcake game to give the Super Bowl winner an easy win to more of like a competitive matchup. In terms of and on that front, we also kind of had our nightcap, like our wrap up for the week, or for Sunday. Our other big rivalry.
Yes.
Lions, Rams was an absolute banger. It was a bit of a stressful game for the... Yes. It was a stressful game for the Rams. Unfortunately, they had very bad injury luck. Puka Nacua is most likely going to miss a few weeks.
Yeah.
their entire so much of my faith in them winning the division and being a low-key Super Bowl contender was based on health. I was like, well, they can't be as hurt as they were they're as hurt as they are last year.
Yeah.
Their offensive line is in tatters. And yet Matthew Stafford, I maintain, is like maybe the best pure arm talent we've ever seen at the position in terms of just like, man, this man slings it like a magician. Even without an offensive line, even with the Lions balling out to stop the run, him and Cooper Kupp just put on a clinic. Again, for fantasy owners, Matthew Stafford does not look a gift horse in the mouth. Cooper
Yes.
Kupp had a career high in receptions and targets.
Yeah, it like that's another game that it's just like that was fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Like if we stopped there for games of the week, I would have been like that was a very well booked week
Mm-hmm.
because like they brought it into overtime, and then the Lions just systematically ran their overtime.
Yes.
It was
You know what I like about that?
yeah. I feel like neither team lost. Like
Right.
technically the Rams have a L in their column,
Yeah.
but
it's like those two, that was a heavyweight match. Whoever got the ball first was going to win.
Yeah.
Like the defenses were out of gas. But what I liked about that game is a division rivalry that also happened, Chargers Raiders, that I don't have too much to say about. Only that the Raiders had a chance to go for it. It was a fun watch. It is a good proof. I will say, Joe Alt, if I'm going to pencil in a rookie I saw this week to be a Hall of Famer, it is in fact Joe Alt Delete. Because he went toe to toe with Mason Crosby and shut him down. No sack. I don't think he ended up getting a sack. He looked elite already. And the whole
Mason
proof of
Crosby?
concept or Max Crosby, Jesus. The whole proof of concept of we're just going to build an offensive line so Herbert doesn't die and we can run the ball turned out to be good.
Yeah.
But my point is the Raiders had a chance to go for it on 4th and 2 to basically have a chance to tie the game, and they chickened out like, we'll punt and maybe get the ball back. They did not get the ball back. Whereas the Lions, who equally have very similar energy, that Dan Campbell, we're going to rip kneecaps off and bite chickens, actually did it. They're like, you know what? We are literally going to run the ball 8 straight times in overtime, just march this ball downfield and win the game because we're not screwing around anymore. We're tough. You're small. Let's go.
I think
Like, in terms of a character win, that's huge.
I think that solved their biggest problem from last year was they wanted to like win in the moment a couple of games that didn't always go in their favor, like their game against the Cowboys, where there was also some BS with reffing and all that stuff. Who's an
where their machismo their machismo didn't result in success.
Yeah, but
where they're like, we're tough, we're going for it on 4th down, and then it's like, well, shoot.
This one felt like they learned. This one, they were like, we can try and go for the win, or we can get the field goal, and just put them in their place, and that's exactly what happened.
Yes, and then just over the board, there were just a lot of fun games. Just not even rivalry games. The Patriots shocked and stunned. The Bills-Cardinals game was the exact Mario Kart superstar, like when you get the star in Mario Kart of like 2 offenses just slicing through butter defenses.
Yeah.
The first game in Brazil, while sloppy, was entertaining, and God bless the football gods for letting Saquon Barkley be on a good team now.
Yeah, which hilarious concept of Saquon, because last year I keep mentioning this, it was Saquon and the Giants, not the New York Giants with Saquon. And
yes,
like people are like talking about how it's like he's probably washed, he's probably not he's probably done, which
as someone who watched those games, you're wrong. You're simply incorrect.
You're clearly wrong now because it's no longer all right. We need to put 3 guys on Saquon and everyone else just kind of plays down. Now that Saquon he's not the exclusive option. He has an offensive line that knows how to like work as a unit. It was fantastic to watch. Terrible to play against in fantasy, but fantastic to watch. And Like that first play jitters of like, oh man, I need to blow. Like he like got it like out of the way pretty much where he gets the ball and then just eats it behind the quarterback. Not even 5 seconds after he touches the ball, he just eats shit.
Oh yeah. Well, I immediately was like, "Oh no, I'm gonna look like such an idiot."
That was the funniest thing. I was dying at that, and I'm so glad I got to watch that because it was great and fun to watch.
Yeah.
And then
Thank God he had a great game after that, because I was
Yeah.
hyping him up all year. I would have looked like such an asshole if he didn't turn it around.
and it showed signs of improvement for both sides. Both sides looked solid. Um, I think they both proved it's like them at least making it to the playoffs was not quite a fluke, and they have potential to do it again.
Um, but yeah, all around a very strong week, and a very strong week for a specific philosophy you
Yes.
believe in.
Field
The
goals win
Bulls
games.
win games. Yes, yes, yes. All right, I'll give you your couple minutes to gloat and celebrate all the kicks.
It's simple. The kickers fucking balled out. The one player I respect on the Cowboys, like, was kicking them out of the park. I looked it up, and I'm pretty sure I'm still right. Yeah. The 49ers scored 32 points. How many physical touchdowns did they actually get?
I think they only got one touch.
They
Two?
got 2. So that is a total of 12 out of the 32 that was not a ball kicked through the uprights. That's kind of insane.
At one point, it looked like the Cowboys kicker was going to try and kick a 71-yard. He would have tied Tucker's record if they hadn't thrown a flag.
Yeah.
Like a formation problem. And it had distance. It wasn't like the Tucker one where it bounced. It could have gone another couple yards. They should have just let him kick it.
Yeah. In my opinion, he bitched out, but you know. And then kind of going with my philosophy is going to be leading into my don't sleep on game of the week. So
well, I will say quickly just about the kickers. I'm like, it is kind of exciting to be in like a new era of kicking because like every now and then you see a moment in sports where the sport fundamentally changes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it used to be you had to get it like a 40-yard field goal was considered. Like when Scott Norwood missed like the 43-ish yarder he took, that was considered really far for a kicker at that point. Now that's kid shit. That's like if you can't make that at least 9 times out of 10, you're not an NFL kicker. Like what a world we live in where it's like reasonable that multiple kickers are going to be able to hit 60-yarders within the next couple of years.
It's crazy.
It does kind of rule. It does fundamentally change the sport.
Oh yeah. But so my don't sleep on game, and for those of you playing along at home for the first time, the don't sleep on game is the game where if you have no stakes on either team, like this is the game you want to watch to just enjoy football. It's not going to be your like main event games like Sunday Night Football or Thursday Night Football or like where it's like they got their own standalone time slot because they kind of make those. They should, in my opinion, make those special. Same with the foreign games, but you know we'll talk about some of those games when they happen. Looking at you, Panthers, Giants. But the don't sleep on game is like that 1:00 game where it's just like I can only watch one game at this time slot that's not my team, or like which one do I want it to be, or like at 4:00. And I went with Miami versus Jacksonville. It just beat out the Texans Colts by winning via field goal with 0 seconds on the clock.
Perhaps the most Jacksonville Jaguars loss we have ever seen.
Yes. The Jaguars were pretty dominant in the first half, scoring all 17 of their points in the first half alone, and keeping the Dolphins down to like to 7 at half, and then then the Dolphins just kind of woke up, Tyreek Hill
Right.
had an 80-yard pass, and then they just started shooting field goals just to
Yes.
beat him out. And
Yes, the Jaguars went on a 94-yard drive with halfway through the third quarter. That would have been the kill shot. They would have
That
scored. They would have been up 24-7, and like the Dolphins just really didn't have enough gas to do it. Travis Etienne fumbles through the end zone
yes,
like a flippin' jabroni, and on the exact next play, Tyreek Hill, who we'll talk about later, gets it basically a play only he could make for 80 yards to score.
mm-hmm.
The Jaguars completely spiral, and the Dolphins kick 2 field goals to win.
Yeah, like after that Travis Etienne just slippery drop, it was like the beginning of the end for the Jaguars. They just fell apart. There's no other way to describe it.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. One of my biggest overreactions from this week is that Doug Peterson will be the first coach fired because.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the Giants are gonna do, so I'll stick with Doug Peterson.
I think it's one of like the Giants are in this weird realm of bad where I feel like you have job security if you're halfway decent. Because like they at least have to acknowledge they don't really have much like weapons wise. Doug Peterson's in that gray area where he's got enough talent to be like, you should be like pretty decent, but he's not like a team full of stars like the 49ers are.
Yeah.
That's a team full of like big names in every position basically. And like so he's like at that very weird middle area of like you don't have much going for you, like you don't have like you're not rounded with like just high levels of talent, but you're not crap.
Right.
And I feel like that's the least secure job spot, is that gray area right there. Because if you're on a bad team, like sure you'll get getting rid of or something, however you say it, at some point. But they have to acknowledge that this is a bad team and this isn't exclusively coaching. This is just bad talent.
I guess, but it's just at some point you hit it's just easier to get rid of the coach than to bring in a new GM and have a whole new vision.
It absolutely is. But it's like if you're a bad team, you can at least acknowledge it's like you're a bad team. We'll probably replace you in like the off season or something like that.
Right.
As opposed to like a mid-season fire to try and push towards the end.
Right. It was I don't know. It was just a fascinating game in terms of like all the discourse about the Jaguars was they had the worst luck last year. Their luck obviously will have to turn around. That's just how luck works. And it's like, no, not necessarily. Turns out very often there is no bottom. You can just keep digging deeper, baby.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your don't sleep on game, because that's...
Yeah, this was a weird one for me. I had a couple different options. They weirdly, a lot of them weirdly ended up having the rookie quarterbacks in them. But I decided to go with Tampa Bay, Washington, just because I think it was an interesting story. For starters, we have like basically the actual new era of Washington football post Dan Snyder starts with Jalen Daniels as quarterback. And also, like, quietly, the Buccaneers have been one of the most consistent teams in the NFL in terms of, like, only the Bills have won their division more often in terms of consecutive times. And Baker Mayfield put on a clinic. He was 24 of 30 for 289 yards and 4 touchdowns. And it really didn't look like dummy stats. They were, like, the plays were crisp. They were making good catches. There's a very real chance the Commanders' defense is actually just like butt cheeks. Again, there's a huge talent drain there as they sort of like save money effectively. But like, I don't know. And like most of the discussion, because at some point when you have such a big lead, the discussion just turns to like individual player stories. Talking about Baker Mayfield and sort of like the evolution of him as like a person, for lack of a better word, in terms of like, the frat boy days might be over. He has a kid now. He's a little more mature. Like, quietly the team has kept most of the same talent, and it's very funny to see Baker Mayfield seem very comfortable as the two teams he was, kicked to the curb for spiral out of control. And meanwhile, Jane Daniels is a guy after this game, I do want to see as much of his play as possible because is he a good quarterback right now? Not really. They could really
I'd
use
say
more talent
too
on
early
offense.
to tell.
Yeah, too early to tell is a fair way to put it. But you also see why the Commanders would favor him over like Drake May. You see why he sprang up draft boards despite a handful of red flags. Because like and I think I really started to appreciate like what makes him special in terms of like, okay, he's a running quarterback, but what kind of running quarterback? Is he like the Cam Newton, Josh Allen, like physical muscular freak? Is he the Lamar like elusive phone booth escaping mania? Is he like the Cole Pepper McNabb, like run around behind the line of scrimmage and make things happen? No, he is a dead ringer for RG3 in terms of just pure straight line speed. This man is fast. There was one play in particular, one of my favorite plays of the day. He does a read option with Brian Robinson at the goal line, and before the defense can even react, before they even start moving, he's already over the goal line because he goes so quickly from faking the handoff to just moving that he's already in the end zone. And I'm like, okay, I see why you were excited about drafting this guy because that is scary. But much like Robert Griffin's career being cut short by injuries, he seems to have internalized nothing from this offseason in terms of like, hey man, you can't let yourself get hit like that. His helmet came off twice, like just shot off like a Lego man. So I am a little nervous, but I will say I am now bought in on him being a dynamic player in the NFL, if nothing else. And yeah, it was just kind of I don't know, like the game was out of control pretty early, and yet it was still entertaining. Like both teams were playing. It wasn't really like, comparing it to another game, like the Seattle-Denver game, where it's just like, this is just a bit of a slog. It's just stuff is happening. Like, I was compelled to keep seeing if someone was going to do something cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was mine. Shall we head over to the lowlights? Because we do have a couple.
Yeah. Copied
kick-
over from last year. Sorry, my bad.
Oh, go ahead.
Copying over from last year. Big QB's bust. Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Danny Dimes, all once again busted.
Yes. Where to even begin on this one?
I don't know what
Well-
happened with the I'm scared for the Bengals. They're isolated.
Yeah, I guess I'm like, which one of these is the biggest red flag for me? And I'm like, well, it's not Danny Dimes because again, Giants fans, it's okay.
Yeah,
This is
more
what you
Kenny
want.
Nichols.
Right, it's time. My big argument in the group chat was just like, they shouldn't even have kept Saquon Barkley to play him. They literally could have just been like, hey, we are going to play him 10 snaps a game, just do right by him. Like, truly, just for the vibes of doesn't it suck that their 100th year anniversary is going to be, I mean, I guess it's good for the Eagles, but, like, it sucks that their 100th anniversary is like this.
I think it's pretty clear. I'm a big storyline guy. I'm a big moments guy. It sucks that this is their 100th season and they kind of look like dog shit.
Right. It's the equivalent of like Disney getting super hyped for the 100 and doing all these cool things, but then the first film they release is Quantumania, and the internet decides that's the worst thing ever, and just the whole thing goes capsized. So whatever. And like Aaron Rodgers, he didn't look great, but he didn't look awful. The biggest red flag is just that he seems very averse to being hit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if he can't get that out of his head, it's just going to stall everything.
In my opinion, there was also the fact that he kind of left pretty early. Like, he did not finish the game.
True, they did pull the plug pretty quickly. I didn't realize, because I was like going in and out, I didn't realize they pulled him out for Tyrod.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like, okay, the offense doesn't look awful with Tyrod Taylor in, which I guess should be the victory.
Yeah.
Because it's like...
They didn't look awful with Tyrod. But it's one of those things that, in my opinion, like, if I was looking for a starting QB and this guy wants out before, like, the game's over and we're kind of really just, like, trying to make a stand, I would be questioning his leadership a little bit, Because they didn't pull like any of their other like major starters. It was just him.
I noted that's why I was confused. I'm like, wait, they kept Brees Hall in, but
Yeah.
not.
Like if they pulled all their starters and they were just like this game's a lost cause, I can kind of understand that. I
Right.
I don't.
If they didn't
but
believe
it's-
enough in his calf to keep him in, then that's concerning.
Yeah, but it's like you're kind of like it felt like an abandonment thing.
Right.
Just
I am a little. Yeah, the whole thing was bewildering. Again, at the end of the day, I'm just like, he made it through the game. He didn't look complete like diarrhea. The handful of times it worked, at least you're like, oh, all right, this is what they were hoping for.
Mhm.
Like, it made Garrett Wilson look good and like that. And then, like, the Joe Burrow one, I'm like, yeah, that, I mean, you want to excuse it because it's like, well, they're always slow to start. But they usually don't play the Patriots, who are Vegas's favorite to win the least amount of games. Like, that's embarrassing. And just in general, the vibes are so weird. He seems a little, like, spaced out right now, on top of, like, you know, Jamar Chase begrudgingly is like, I guess I'll play. And then T. Higgins is like, I'm sick. And it's like, well, fuck, man, come on.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the vibes in Cincinnati are weird. I don't.
yeah. I just, again, this was supposed to be the do or die year because it seems like they're hell bent on not paying both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And it's like, well, then your team's going to be different.
Yeah.
You gotta, this has to be the year you kind of like really go for it.
Yeah, and it makes me feel skeptical for them. And their season
Right.
is a very big mix of easy at difficult.
Right. I was looking over these teams to see who they play next. The Bengals play the Chiefs next. They actually might get the crap kicked out of them.
Yeah, they played the
Like
Chiefs.
that, I think that, like, yeah, the story of the week might be what's wrong with the Bengals.
Yeah, like they play the Chiefs, and then they go Commanders, Panthers, and then they go Ravens, and then they go Giants, Browns, and then they go Eagles, and then it's like Raiders, Ravens. Like they can't catch like
Yeah.
a nice calm streak. They have at max 2 weeks in between two difficult teams to like try and collect easier wins.
Right. Meanwhile, the advantage the Jets have is it seems like they realized, like they wanted to do a do-over of Aaron Rodgers in prime time, but then the rest of their schedule through the month is kind of like a cupcake run. They get the Titans, the Patriots, the Broncos, and then it's Vikings, Bills, and I feel like that was very deliberate. Like, look, they want one of the New York teams to be good. They want this Aaron Rodgers thing to work because if it doesn't, everyone's getting fired and the Jets are rebuilding. And that means we'll have to wait another, like, 5 years for a good New York team.
Yeah.
So, like, they're pretty determined to make this work. So I'm less worried about them. But, yeah, it was, like, kind of... I don't know. It was kind of a weird week for, like... for the most part, the games were pretty competitive and fun, but the duds were shocking duds in terms of, like, why aren't you better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, a couple teams really flopped hard after, like, an entire offseason of kind of, like, going to bat for them. Similarly, a note I had on this front is all of the QB rookies, unfortunately, did look like rookies. Like, I know that's a weird comment to make, but, like, you know, in this day where we push quarterbacks to play earlier and earlier, you kind of hope it works out. You kind of hope they, you know, they rise up, especially when you have, like, quote unquote generational prospects. Caleb Williams looked rough. He was 14 of 29, had a grand total of 93 yards. And it's not one of those ones where it's like, oh, well, the numbers don't tell this whole story. He kind of just looked nervous. They just really, like, punt, field goal, punt, field goal, field goal. They did not score an offensive touchdown. Their touchdowns came from a blocked punt and an interception return for a touchdown. Yeah, the entire offense just looked oddly skittish for how good they looked in the preseason. It really did feel like it's like the first time they've really gotten hit in the mouth, and they just... I'm not worried. It's more just like they have to get their sea legs under them. I think Caleb had a lot of problem with, like, I guess I would describe it as arm arrogance. He's trying to figure out what he can get away with on the field still, which I was hoping he'd get out during the preseason. Fortunately for them, the Titans kind of imploded, a rough start for the Will Levis experience. Perhaps one of the funniest. It was funnier when I thought he could. Like, Will Levis throws kind of a freaky interception as he's getting hit and then falls to his knees. I thought he was standing up and fell to his knees. No, he was already on the ground and just like held his head in his hands, which is still funny, just not as funny, but already maybe the shot of the year. But fortunately for them, I think it was more the angst of like last year the Bears had high hopes and then got completely jamooked by the Packers, and I was worried that was going to happen to them again. But fortunately, they were able to pull out the win. Meanwhile, we already talked about the Commanders. May didn't end up playing. Obviously, what's his name? Why am I so bad? McCarthy or McCartney?
Yeah.
No, McCarthy. McCarthy's the
McCarthy.
singer.
Yeah.
He obviously didn't play. And then meanwhile, Bo Nix, he's the only one where I'm like, no, he was actually bad. Averaged 3 yards a throw, 2 interceptions. One of them was into triple coverage, and it was that classic, the colorful commentator goes, before it even gets picked.
Yeah. I think that's kind of a sad moment.
I think in terms of teams who I have like completely dropped stock on, I talked myself into the Broncos because I'm like, Sean Payton's a sharp cookie. He'll like keep the offense like humming, and they'll play it very, very safe. But like, if the easy stuff isn't easy, and you're not doing the hard stuff, then where are you?
Mm-hmm.
But a rough first week for the rookies.
Yep.
And in another quarterback adjacent point, what I put, the Arthur Smith game, aka not so easy to make an offense that doesn't suck ass, huh?
All right, Carter.
Yeah,
I know what you mean, but let's have someone else. Like, let's have you explain this for the class.
So the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are currently employing Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator, played the Atlanta Falcons, the team he was formerly the head coach of, and sort of the villain of fantasy and analytics-based football nerds. The Falcons fired him and then finally got their big boy quarterback they've wanted, Kirk Cousins, who's coming off an Achilles tear. Finally, Kyle Pitts would get yards. Finally, Drake London would get yards. Bijan would be cut loose and be able to fly free. They ended up losing 18-10 in a truly just kind of sort of stick in the mud game. Like your truck's stuck in the mud. 2 interceptions from Kirk Cousins. The really concerning thing was he just did not look like he had any mobility whatsoever. They ran 0 play action, which was what he was famous for in Minnesota. Our beloved first-round pick talent, Pitts had 3 catches and a touchdown. Drake London, 2 catches for 15 yards. Bijan was fine. They didn't really have any lanes open. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh defense kind of just feasted on them. TJ Watt kind of had the most dominant performance of this first week. He was reading the snap so well that they started calling penalties on him because they're like, no, he obviously went offsides. But then you watch and you're like, no, he's just moving faster than the offensive line. The Falcons, I should mention, had to start going to silent snap counts because there were so many Pittsburgh fans there. And in reality, the Pittsburgh outside of defense wasn't that impressive. Justin Fields continues to vex and confuse, but he didn't commit turnovers. The run game was fine, and they had the 2 or 3 splash plays they needed. In terms of teams whose stock should be sold, like, again, we want to be nice. Like, Kurt will get his sea legs theoretically, but like that is a rough start to what was supposed to be like hey, we got 2 years to win a Super Bowl. The stock feels very low, and Arthur Smith gets to laugh to the bank knowing that Bijan, Drake, and Pitts still all are getting crumbs for all their hard work.
Yep.
Truly beautiful. And it looks like people were clowning on Russell Wilson because he was technically inactive but still wearing his jersey. Although later it came out that despite being inactive, he was also listed as their quote-unquote... the 49ers, after that one playoff game, bitched about like needing to be allowed to have an extra quarterback in case of an emergency. So now there's a thing called an emergency quarterback, where you can have an extra person who isn't technically on the 53-day roster, who can come in and play in case of an emergency. So he needed his jersey in case of an emergency. He wasn't just wearing it to be like a rah-rah high school football kid. It just seemed like a very Russell Wilson thing to do.
Yeah, it checks out.
But no, he had to do that. Here's one of your points.
Yes.
Monday Night Football. Can we start the time slot rearranging?
All right. Kevin's on his scheduling soapbox. That's gonna need
The grand scheduling poobah.
It's gonna need its own theme and graphic at some point. We had a solid week of football. Like the
Literally a whole work week worth of football.
Opening game of the entire season. Fantastic game to watch. Came down to the wire due to like a very small technicality, and a couple thrown passes before that. But it was like that's what the last play was. First game in Brazil. I expected more from the Eagles, but that's because I'm an Eagles fan.
They were fun.
The 1:00 time slots, you had your big blowout games, of course, but every other game stayed within a relatively calm, spot, like 16-10, 18-10, 29-27. 28-34, 17-20. These were all games, playing down to the wires, and the
largely competitive week.
Yeah. 4:00 time slot kind of fell off a little bit. Seahawks Broncos was an entertaining game. Commanders Bucks was an entertaining game. Cowboys Browns, Raiders Chargers. Actually, I had fun watching Raiders Chargers. And then Sunday Night Football. Rams Lions. Yes. That is a football game. We're starting hot, we're ending hot, we're hyped, we're feeling good, and then Monday Night Football, Jets 49ers. And it's not really a statement it's not really a statement against the teams in that slot, but goddamn, is that just a cold bucket of water on a fire that we had burning, because and it's why I'm hey, let's start rearranging the schedule now, because it's imagine if that game was on the 4:25 slot or something like that.
Right.
And
already we're having the problem where they don't know what to do with the 420s.
Yeah. And then it's all right, and let's do a true replacement. We'll do it with Jaguars, Dolphins, or Texans, Colts. So you end Sunday night feeling good, and then you about it, and then you get put on for another real close down to the wire game. You were leaving week 1 going, the NFL is back, baby. And now it's just all right, let's hope Thursday Night Football shows up.
Right. The fundamental problem we have, as you're describing this, I realize the fundamental problem we have is the entire year should have flex scheduling.
Yes.
The problem is you can't do that as long as there's a Thursday night game.
Correct.
Because it would be horrifically dangerous and unfair to ask two teams to be ready to go. Say you announce it Monday, you're asking multiple teams to basically have be ready to go days in advance of what they were expecting. So if you were to cut out the Thursday night games and just say Sunday, Monday, you could theoretically announce all of it on Monday night or Tuesday morning and give everyone enough time to prep and make sure the best games get the best slots.
Yes.
They were so close to having all the primetime games be perfect. But they put too much stock in the Jets being great.
Yeah, they put too much stock in Aaron Rodgers. That's literally it.
Right.
A big
comeback. Which, again, I don't know how you do that with the Broncos and Russell Wilson and with the Jets last year with the Achilles tear and be yeah, but it'll work this time.
But and it's also and it's not they're putting them against Broncos or Titans or someone where it's just they don't really need to be a really good offense to put to win this game. They just need to not suck.
Right.
You put them against one of the best defenses. And
right. You didn't give them a cupcake game where it's all right, let's watch a player we just get a lot of points.
Yeah. Everyone's hyping up Aaron Rodgers. There's the Into the Darkness. What was he going to do? Tears his Achilles. His first game back in a hot, like, that's not on the Packers. And it's just like, here's your most difficult opponent. Deal with it.
Right. And you kind of just like putz it out and don't really do anything and end up benching everyone anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that it kind of ties into a point I wanted to make of like, I think we've reached too much football. I think I like, a take I didn't want to fully commit to last week is I think this is the year people kind of turn on football again a little bit. I do think we forget pre-pandemic, the vibes for football kind of were stinky.
A little bit,
Like
yeah.
they were kind of rough. Like, there was so many different like like there were so many different scandals. Like the whole concussion thing really put a damper on the league.
Yes.
It all kind of culminated with the Ray Rice absolute fiasco. It was the closest time we will ever get to Goodell actually getting fired. And like people are kind of down and out on football. But then we turn around, the pandemic happens, and the NFL fully commits to like, oh, we are going to play all of these games. We are going to give people a taste of normal, and it basically serves as like sort of what's the word? It serves as like what's the word? I'm literally like culture laundering, like sort of vibes laundering. Like it fixes the vibes. And now I feel like we're pivoting the other way, where the NFL's got a little too cocky. Like they're probably trying to tap the Taylor Swift thing for just a little too much oil. Where it's like,
Yeah.
all right, it's cool that you have a new audience, but you don't have like you're going a little too far with it. You're breaking the rules and like having games on Fridays to like go against high school football.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
like the Deshaun. Yeah, it feels like we're reaching an apex where the bubble's getting a little too big. It's bound to pop.
It's bound to pop, and it's like things like these games where it's just like I understand rearranging schedules like can disrupt an entire person's day.
Mm.
Like for a fact. But it's just like you think these matches would be good, and you kind of are setting up like soft like I feel like it makes sense to set off with a more softball, like easy win, like not easy win, like in the game, but like the easy. Oh, I'm gonna like this game. Like this is gonna be a good game to watch, and it's always not a guarantee, but I feel like putting the Jets there and the 5 days a week, like that kind of is like a little too much. Like their normal schedule of like a game on Thursday, a bunch of games on Sunday, and then a game on Monday is, in my opinion, a solid amount of football. It's not too much, it's not too little, but they can't be ending or starting with bummers. Because if you put a bummer in a time slot, it's not going to be. It's going to really harsh it. And then with like the international games, I can understand it. Why in week 1 though? Why have an international game week 1 when your fans are going to be like the rowdiest?
Well, because that's the only way they're allowed to play on Friday. They have I don't know if it's like a RIN rule or like a broadcasting agreement, but they're not allowed to have games in basically in the U.S. Like it has to be within 200 miles on Fridays while high school football is playing. So they're like, we'll circumnavigate this by going international. But yeah, it's like such a weird choice. And again, it's what I mean. The bubble's too big where they're like, we are going to make this an international sport come hell or high water. And it's like, how about no?
And it's like also like give them something. Like for example, week 5 is the Vikings versus the Jets. Who knows how that's going to go off the bat? Week 6, Texans, Bears, which could be kind of good. Week 7, Jacksonville, Patriots, which once again, Jacksonville, back-to-back weeks. Week 10, for Germany, Panthers, Giants. How did you make it out of the preseason with thinking that would be the game to put in a foreign country without, like, not repercussions, but, like, goddamn, what are we doing? Like, it doesn't... The international games, in my opinion, should be the don't sleep on games. Like, it doesn't have to be the big rivalry game. It doesn't have to be at a huge time slot. But do some effort into picking the team. So, like, that week, Bengals Ravens is Thursday Night Football, which could be better. You have Lions Texans at Sunday Night Football, and Monday Night Football's Dolphins Rams, which is, it seems like you're gonna end strong. But other games that could go into that Week 10 over Panthers Giants game, you have Broncos Chiefs, division rivals, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, huge names. Like it might not be a great game to watch, but the star-studded value is there, like the huge names. And you have, like, arguably one of the bigger rivalries, Eagles-Cowboys at a 4 o'clock game. Like, put that, like, obviously, like, that's going to lose a lot of money on U.S. soil, but, like, put a game like that overseas, like, where these two teams hate each other with a passion and will go out of their way to kill each other.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's the biggest flaw with, like, the international games and stuff, is, like, they don't think on what should go there. Or, like send Lions Texans there and bump up Eagles Cowboys to Sunday Night Football.
Mm-hmm.
There's options. There's so many options, and you made it out of, like, you can't be making it out of, like, preseason for this international game. Like, I feel like once the season starts, international games should be, like, set in stone. Like, they're not changing, but it's like, you did Giants Panthers. The joke of, I see we're still making Germany pay for World War II, I've seen way too much.
Right. Yeah, just an absolute, I cannot believe they did an international game week 1. Just stupid. But, yeah, and the final low light, truly a low light both in terms of vibes and actual play. How the hell did the Deshaun Watson thing get worse? So the Cowboys came in, they announced on the day that they gave Dak Prescott his huge contract. So at least all the contract angst is over for the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. And then they just beat the ever-living hell out of the Browns. The Deshaun Watson stats do not tell the whole tale. He was 24 of 45, 169 yards, 2 picks, 6 sacks. He can't do the hard or the easy stuff right. At least 3 times he just sailed a ball over the player's head out of bounds. The fans were booing. The vibes were absolutely putrid. This trade didn't make, as someone pointed out, this trade didn't make sense when he was nominally a good quarterback. And this was truly, you would think it would get better by default just from him playing more football, but he's somehow gotten worse.
Yeah.
On top of that, a new accusation has come out that is somehow even more egregious than the other 23. And it really does come down to, like, how long can they keep this going? Because they feel obligated to play him. They feel so obligated to play him that they got rid of Joe Flacco because he was too likable and he was, like, improving the, like national standing of the team. And now you have Jameis Winston, who is equally problematic, but is at least liked by people. Like, at least people seem to be friends with him. Yeah, there is a chance the NFL, if this investigation goes through, they could possibly void his contract if he did not disclose that this might come up. But, like, I kind of hope they don't. The Browns kind of... Well, it's tough because there's so many... They do kind of deserve it, but so many of the fans don't. Yeah, there were a lot of asshole fans who excused this, but there were also fans who, like, were morally offended by all of this. I think about that one fan who has a Browns jersey with every single quarterback's name on it, except Deshaun's, which he just had a little banner for sexual abuse victims. And I was like, that guy doesn't deserve this. He didn't choose this. And I think about all the great players on an actually good team who, like, don't deserve this. But at the same time, we can't excuse this. It's just the Browns almost became Joe Flacco was so fun, it almost made the Browns a feel-good story last year.
Yeah.
And somehow we're back to square one of being both football repulsed and morally repulsed.
Yeah, no, I agree to those conditions.
Shall we go to something lighter with some notable notes?
Yeah, new dynamic kickoff rules. So, all right, let me see if I'm still trying to get it down. So, the kicker kicks off...
It's weirdly convoluted.
Yeah, the kicker kicks off from the 30. Their 30. and both entire other teams, minus the kicker and the returners, are lined up on. Are they on the 50 and the 40, or both 40s?
I think I think it's 50 and 40 because I think it's only a 10-yard difference.
Yeah, it's a small difference. And then if and then it's from like the end zone, like the 1 yard line, to the 30. Is it the 30 yard line? Is the landing zone, quote unquote?
Yes, I think so.
Where if the ball lands in that zone, it has to be returned, unless like it can't be fair catched or taken for a touchback or anything like that.
Mm.
And then if you kick a touchback, you start at the 30. But I think if it goes out of bounds, it starts at the like 40 or something like that.
I think, yes, if it goes out of bounds, it goes to the 40.
Yes.
If they touch it back, it goes to the 30. And I will say, this is kind of the problem compared to how the XFL did it. Because the XFL, it would go up to the 35. So there was like a big consequence for making it a touchback. Whereas, like, if you crunch the numbers from the preseason, people were returning it to the 27, and the touchback was the 30. So a lot of teams were just like, just kick it into the end zone, whatever.
Yeah. Save effort.
Right. There were a few cool returns this season. A couple strategies, a couple blocking patterns. I believe one or two were returned for touchdowns. There was an interesting meta that was getting revealed of what if the kicker line drives it at the return man and he fails to catch it. Then it becomes a free-for-all where anyone can get the ball, or the other team gets the ball. I believe at one point the Bills did it, and they got the Cardinals stuck at like the 10 and basically forced them to just end the half. But there's a strategy to it, because if you screw up and you miss the kick and it goes out of bounds, then it gets sent to the 40. It is also just funny that that's like a strategy you can use.
Yeah.
Because objectively, hitting someone with the ball and then having a mad scramble where everyone's charging at each other to get the ball is objectively more dangerous, just as dangerous as our original kickoff, where we're all just running at each other full speed. But, you know, I guess it looks a little safer. I guess there's not as much, like, people aren't running like 30 yards before they hit someone.
Yeah, it's like
I hate to say
weird
it.
Level of concerning.
I hate to say it, but I'm kind of starting to side with you that I'm like, maybe this wasn't the best idea.
I've actually grown to, like, I guess, tolerate it.
Really?
I like, when they first pitched it, I said, this is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Now watching it being done, like, in execution, I don't hate it as much as I once did with just the idea, but I'm still not the biggest fan of it.
Right.
I think I'm on board with giving it this season to sell it as like a reasonable thing, or just going back.
Right.
Because it's kind of like you said, like a solid run. If you kick, like, if they return it, is they make it to the 30, give or take, and then that's like, all right, just hit a touchback. We guarantee they're there. We're not going to be gassed by the time that it happens, like on defense. So,
right.
It's whatever.
Yeah. A slightly more shocking story. Tyreek Hill's run-in with the police. So I believe the story... Right, I believe the story was he was speeding. The body cam footage ended up coming out, and it very much was a...
Power trip?
Yeah, it was a power trip. I believe it seems like they pretty quickly identified who it was and decided to make a scene about it. I did not realize he got brought to, like, the ground.
Yeah.
And it annoys me because, like, I really don't like Tyreek Hill. Like, he was falling in our draft, and I just was like, well, I'm not going to draft him on moral stances. But he objectively got screwed here by, like, guys flexing their power in Miami. The fact that he ended up going out and playing is actually pretty impressive, all things considered, and he did play well.
I think
it's
Tyreek Hill. I think if he was any lower level player, he would have been out.
Right. They, you know, it's weird because it's like Yeah, right. Like he would have. They probably would have detained him and had him arrested if he was any less famous. But at
Hmm.
the same time, it's insane that he would. They wouldn't have even bothered if he was, you know, less famous. I feel. But yeah, I don't know. Just gross story. It's weird that this is like one of the big stories coming out of the week. But at least, as much as I don't like Tyreek Hill, at least he's using the opportunity to actually say stuff about like our policing situation in America.
Hmm.
At least he's trying to do a good thing for a change. So I guess I can at least give him a thumbs up
Yeah.
on that. And a similar weird vibes thing is it mirrors all the stadiums like ice rinks. Very famous. We talked about the Brazil field being an absolute
That
ice
was
rink.
a slip and slide. It was pretty
It
good.
is. Did you almost call it a slip and shit?
I almost did.
Like when you have to run out of the shower with fecal urgency, and
Yeah.
you're just like, "Oh God, oh shit, oh no, this guy you'll be again at 10:30." But yeah, no, they are very lucky that Jordan Love ended up hurting his knee because Jalen Carter grabbed his leg and not because he slipped. Because then they'd be in a lot more trouble. You know what? I really started to appreciate. You know what it is? Why they let the stadiums get this bad?
To make people get injured.
Well, maybe one or two owners are sociopathic like that, but mostly because turf is way easier. You can literally have concrete under it. You can literally pick up the turf and move it. And like most of these owners are like not new money, but like not the original owners. They're like investment capitalist people.
Hmm.
And stadiums are big investments because it's like, oh, we'll not only have football games, but we can also have concerts. We can have Taylor here. We can have Chappell Ronan here. I don't know if she's gone on tour yet. I think she just shows
She
up
has.
places. But the point is, like, grass is way harder to maintain that way because it's stuck there and it gets destroyed when people walk on it. And it really is just this craven thing of like, oh, well, we want to make even more money, so we'll stick with this crappy turf.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what level of injury would it take to force like the league to change their policy on that?
I thought it
Who
would
would
have
have to
been
get
last
hurt?
year. I thought last
Right,
year MetLife was destroying careers left and right.
right. I thought Aaron Rodgers. Well, I think they talked themselves out of it with Aaron Rodgers. It's like, well, he was getting tackled and like,
Yeah.
wah, wah. Because I think about how like back in like 2009, opening day, Patriots versus Chiefs. Tom Brady gets like someone goes low on Tom Brady's leg, it bends weird, and him tearing his ACL fundamentally changes how the sport's played because that's when they add all of these rules to protect the quarterbacks and just increase passing. And yet all these leg injuries, and they're just not changing the turf policy.
Yeah. I think.
I feel like I feel like it's just a hard line from the owners. Like we will fire you, Roger, before we let you change anything
Yeah.
about this.
And it's like one of those things where it's just like I feel like there's enough money and advancements in tech, like in stuff that if they put in the effort and a little bit of funding, they they could all have pure grass fields that are able to handle concerts and of huge events and stuff. They just don't because of the money.
Yeah, I don't know. I really just, I mean, I feel like a change is going to happen whether they're like, someone big enough is going to get hurt in a way where there is absolutely no plausible deniability about this was caused by the turf. And it's just going to change things. Again, no one would have believed they'd change stuff to prevent concussions until it happened.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. Um, Man, it really is the 1 year anniversary of Aaron Rodgers going. I forgot it was on 9/11. Man, they really did do all that. I
Yeah.
just saw the highlight.
Yep.
God, I remember watching that and be like, there is no way.
Oh, I
There's no
remember.
way this.
I was
Again,
laughing.
the fact that he made it through a game feels alien to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's bring back another segment I really like, the question of the week.
Yep.
You brought us a question for this week.
Yep, my question for this week is so now that week one's done, what team made a blip on your radar? They don't have to be like a team to watch out for, but it's just like, I acknowledge you. I might be paying more attention to you than I previously was.
Right. Ooh, that's a good question. I have two kind of outside the box ones, but what did you have in mind?
So there's like there's a couple. I think the one that is like kind of like I'm not gonna be hyper focused on them like I was for like the Texans last year. They don't have like a weird story going on like the Lions did. But The Vegas Raiders. I'm kind of like, yeah. I didn't hate what I saw from them. They weren't like the best team out there, but I will say I was more impressed than I thought I would be. So it's just that's my team. That's kind of like
Mhm. I like it. Mine, I'm torn. You know what? I'm not going to pick the Saints because I need to see them play a game against not the Panthers before yeah. You know what? I'm going to go with the Patriots. For all the heat they got this offseason about, like, oh, oh, this is it. They're going to suck. They're going to go 1-15. Like, they at least look competent enough that I'm like, I could see them getting to 6 wins.
Yeah. So,
like,
Patriots are against Seahawks and Saints are against Cowboys. So these are teams that, like, they can actually, we can see how good they actually are.
Right. That'll be a huge barometer for this of, like, okay, you went against Week 1 Bengals and the Panthers who might already have to bench Bryce Young. Let's see a real football team. I don't know. After a weird offseason in terms with the Patriots of, like, who's actually in charge here, Mayo actually had a couple fun zingers during the broadcast, or, like, during the interviews after. Yeah. Oh, God, I don't remember what prompted it, but he made a comment about, I think it was about doing the option, and then he goes, and I know we're in trouble because Jacoby Brissett's the slowest black quarterback in the league, which I'm like, God dang it. It's so weird to have a charming, like a normal charismatic Patriots coach and not like a nerd Patriots coach.
Yeah.
And that sent me down a rabbit hole where I'm like, is he? And I was like, I wanted to say Dak, but that's not fair because he broke his leg. Gino's not fast. And I literally was going through my head being like, okay, obviously number one's like Anthony or Lamar. And then I was like going down the list. But yeah, you know what? I'm willing to see them out. Like, I don't know. It would be fun if all 4 AFC East teams are at least competitive this year.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily winning, but competitive. Can they be the Cardinals this year of, like, yeah, they'll be 5-10, but they'll be a feisty 5-10.
Yeah, a fun, like, they'll still be bad, but you're gonna watch their games and be like, oh, this is something.
At least they're entertaining.
Yeah.
All right, that leads us into next week. The biggest game of the week. Literally, in 24 hours, we should know who won it. Thursday Night Football. They got the biggest game to start.
Yeah. So I decided to kind of make this like a little bit more of a prominent thing. Like, we kind of touched on it the last year a lot, of like what we thought were going to be big games too. But biggest game of the week, I think, is like, it's going to be the game that has the most stakes. And these two were fighting for the division spot last year into like the end of the season. And they're two like pretty solid teams, and compared to other like games, it's like, all right, let's see what happens. Like,
yes, it is very funny that after there was the whole Heatgate fiasco where like players were passing out on the field and Bills fans complained, and they're like, and also it was like that it was also snowing when they played in Buffalo in December, and they're like, all right, fine, no one gets a home field advantage. Bills, you're playing in Miami either in the winter or at night, and Dolphins, you're coming up to Buffalo in September. No one gets no one gets home field advantage.
Guess what's happening?
So it's very fun. Yep, nighttime, baby. It'll just be a little humid. Yeah, I'm very curious to see. The Bills looked. Well, here's what I would say about the Bills. It looks like this year very much is going to be the Buffalo Josh Allen in terms of like. That might have been one of his most impressive performances because that game was spiraling. Yes. Well, he did another insane. It might have been his most insane jump, honestly. That was like 2 whole yards. But it truly was like that game was spiraling out of control so quickly. The Cardinals score on their first drive. The Bills fumble on their next drive. The Cardinals score again. The Bills settle for a field goal because they get too many penalties. And the Cardinals are up 17-3. It really, like, the time of possession was 12-2.
Yeah.
Like, shit was bleak out in these streets. And then Josh Allen basically just goes on a heater where he's just like, I am literally just going to control the tempo and rhythm of this game. Every play is either going to be decided by me or me running the ball. They even successfully pulled off that thing where you get the last drive of the half, score a touchdown, get the ball back, and score another touchdown, which I've never seen them do. The problem is, I don't know if this is sustainable because he already hurt his hand. So I will be interested to see, like, especially with the depleted defense, how they're going to run. I think this game will be the real barometer for how far they can go this year.
Yeah, this game is going to set the tone for the AFC East minimum.
Right. Because I do think by the time you get to that Jets game in October, you should know whether or not you should shut Josh down for the year, honestly.
So
in terms of, like, it's not safe for him to play.
Plus, some other games with, like, big-name teams. Vikings, like, the 49ers are playing the Vikings. Ravens are playing Raiders. Chiefs are playing very ambitious Bengals.
Mm.
And we do have last year's Rookie of the Year versus a possible contender with Bears-Texans, which it could be interesting. That could have something there. But none of those are,
yes.
Like, none of those have, like, that big game feel like.
Right. They did kind of blow a lot of the best primetime games week 1, and this feels like you're already back to watching football. We don't need to
this is
drag you back.
We'll have some, like, attention-getting games for you guys, but, like, who wants to watch Chargers-Panthers? Nobody wants to watch Chargers-Panthers.
I do love that it's now a rush to see who can get the defense playing the Panthers. I really didn't think people would use their waiver wire claim for that, but shows what I know.
All right, and then the Don't Sleep On game for next week. Would you like to go first?
Sure, I will. It's a team I haven't brought up yet. As I was watching Sam Darnold look uber competent against the Giants, I just closed my eyes and said, I'm not going to buy into the Sam Darnold train until I have more evidence. I will not buy into the Sam Darnold train until I have more evidence. So here's the first big test. It is San Francisco versus Minnesota. Like I said, Minnesota kind of just put the Giants in a body bag. San Francisco put the other New York team in a body bag. And now they go head-to-head. I think this will be a much better test for both teams to see how the 49ers fare without Christian McCaffrey. Oh, God, we didn't even...
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey's out. I feel like that's more news for next week, but...
Yeah, they kind of... It seems like they really downplayed the severity of that calf, which, again, you can't really let so much gambling dictate the sport and not be more transparent. But that's... Yeah, we'll save that discussion for next week. Yeah, in Minnesota, I want to see... The offense looked uber competent with Sam Darnold in it. Again, I feel like if nothing else, this is a good test of, like, showing off, hey, they have pretty good coaches. They have a pretty good Kevin O'Connell. Like, they have a good little combination of guys in Minnesota to run the offense. And I'm curious to see if that will go, still stack up against one of the better defenses in the league. I think it'll just be an entertaining game one way or the other.
Yeah. I think it could be a more tone-setting game because we get to see, like, more San Fran of, like, what they are. And Minnesota, I didn't hate how they looked. And it's a matter of, is it because they played the Giants? Is that why I didn't hate it? Or is it like there's actually secretly trashed? Or secretly really good? For my Don't Sleep On game, I picked Arizona versus the Los Angeles Rams.
Great choice.
Like, first off...
I would have picked this if you hadn't already picked it.
Yeah. We can pick the same game, Carter. It's allowed.
I know, but I like to have more discussion points.
It's perfectly fine. First off, division rivals. They're both 0-1, and they showed a lot of promise on their opening games for the season. That's what pushed it over. Is the Cardinals were giving the Bills a run for their money for a good portion of it before Josh Allen woke up and was like, oh yeah, I'm Josh Allen. And the Rams literally lost in overtime to the Lions, who just did not let the ball leave their possession. Like, they didn't have a chance to touch it. So I feel like this is going to be another, like... This is going to be a very fun game to put on, and it's also like this could be a future wild card make or break game.
Right, because it really is like I have high hopes for both of these teams to make the playoffs, but it's like which one of them can overcome being 0-2 better. Like, again, they always bring up those numbers of, like, here are your odds of making the playoffs after going 0-2, and it's still pretty dire, even after adding an extra game.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm curious. Like, this really might decide whether or not one of them misses the playoff.
And their second game is week 17, so like this
Wow,
could
really?
be a big tone setter, and we'll see because Cardinals were the best worst team last year, and this time they're looking like a team still. Like James Conner was doing good, Greg Dortch.
Mhm.
So it's like there's fun marks on both sides, and the Rams looked pretty damn good against the Lions. So it's like this could be football. This could be a good football game.
Right. I am excited to see how it. That's the one I might be watching a lot of too.
Yeah. So as we wind down week 1, send us home, Carter.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for another exciting week and another exciting season. We will have to see what overreactions, what underreactions come to fruition for week 2 as the first steps toward the playoffs begin and as teams shape their future. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful week.